Hello VAC fans, welcome to another video, and we're going to be doing a vacuum cleaner today. And I've had a request come in from Mrs. Olivia Morton, I believe, who has left umpteen reviews, sorry, not reviews, what we're talking about, comments on my channel regarding doing redos of various videos I've done in the past. This machine you might recognise because it featured on one of the big mess tests I did not long ago, and the original review I did of this right back in 2014, because it's a machine I've had for quite some time, and I bought this off eBay for just a £5 in, God, it was a few years ago now, and it was a non-worker when I bought it, and it was filthy dirty, and they just said it was spares or repairs, it didn't come on basically. So I had a feeling I knew what it would be, so I drove down to Wolverhampton to fetch this one from where I live in Stoke, because it was down there, and it was on a right rough council estate in Wolverhampton as well, so I thought, oh Christ, just imagine the state this is going to be, because it didn't have very good pictures on eBay of it either. So I walked in and I looked at it and I thought, oh, what an absolute state this is in. No wonder they only want a £5 for it. So I got it home, and fortunately it still had all its tools on, which were these two-tone ones. And because obviously trying to find these now is a little bit more difficult than it used to be, because they only made the tools in this particular colour scheme for this particular model. Later model Dysons all used like grey tools. I know Dorian had an issue with tools when he did. He bought some Dysons recently, Dorian did, and he hadn't got tools with them when they got supplied, because I think he bought refurbished ones. So he ordered some tools off eBay, or wherever he got them from, and they were like generic tools, but they were in grey, because most Dysons from the DC07, mid DC07 run onwards, all seem to use the same colour tools, in the words grey. But the earlier versions like this, they had colour coordinated tools, and some of them, like this one did, they were two-tone. So when I saw this machine had got all its tools, I thought, well, that's really good, because that saves me now having to try and find some off eBay. So all the issue was with it was that the cable that goes into the back had split on this joint here, on the cable grommet where it goes into the housing, which is a common position for DC04s. I think DC07s would suffer. A lot of cleaners actually do suffer at that particular point, where the cord goes into the cleaner on this sort of stress relief grommet, and this one was no exception, and that's why it didn't work. So either I put another cord on it, I can't remember, because I did that many of these back in the day that I can't remember now whether I put another cord on this or whether I just chopped off the damaged piece off the end here and then reconnected it up inside here. But either way, that's all I needed to do to get it working again. The motor is actually alright on it. The clutch is a little tiny bit noisy, because it's the little bearings inside the clutch itself, and you hear that on the run down, on the spin down, when you turn it off there's a little tiny bit of noise coming from that clutch, but it still works okay at the moment, and it's not justifying replacing the clutch. I did do a little video a little while ago on the channel of taking the clutch out of this particular machine. I did it down on the floor here as opposed to in the kitchen, and I think I've used this machine as well on a motor change video that I did. In other words, you're stripping it down to get the motor out, so that's on my channel. And as I've just said, I did the big mess test on this machine as well, and that actually got a fair few views, over 1,000 views, so I think people like seeing this machine for some reason. It may be because it's the rare limited edition version, because it's a nice colour scheme, I don't know. For some reason this machine seems to be quite popular. When I sold some of my old machines in the past, I did have a DC04 Distill, but I gave it away to the local charity shop because I needed to get rid of some of the machines out of the house. I just had too many, and in hindsight I wish I hadn't have done that now, because the DC04 Distill is actually quite a rare model now. You don't see many of them about. I should have kept that one really. I got rid of the yellow Origin DC07, that one's gone, and there was another few cleaners that I don't own anymore that I did on the original run. So unfortunately I should have kept the DC04 Distill. I did keep this one back because I've always had a liking for this particular machine. I myself like the colour scheme on it. It's like the purple and magenta colour scheme, which was associated with the limited edition Meningitis Research, I think it was. They had some versions of this as well. That's what this was launched for originally. This hasn't got the logos and the stickers on that the other ones did. So whether this was a later model that wasn't actually in sort of association, I don't know, to be honest. I don't know whether they did some of these that weren't limited edition models to do with Meningitis Research. This one hasn't got the logo on. Maybe it did and it got pulled off, I'm not sure. But on the stock label it just says Magenta Absolute on it. So basically it's limited edition, but I don't know whether it's to do with the Meningitis Research. So, the DC04 then, this was the replacement for, well, it was intended to be the replacement for the DC01, and it was launched in the late 90s, and it came in the various different colour schemes over its life, which is one thing about Dysons that I used to like an awful lot in the old days, was the amount of colour schemes they brought these out in. They were loud, they were garish, they were lurid colour schemes, but they were really brilliant. They were really good. This one, I mean, it's such a striking colour, and they did a lot of different colour schemes in the DC07 as well. I think more so than the DC04. Certain collectors have got so many DC07s in all these various different colour schemes they brought about in over the years. It's quite staggering really when you think that now most Dysons are only offered in sort of two sorts, aren't they? The multi-floor and the animal, and that's about it. But what they are doing, they're starting to put more colour back into the machines again now than what they used to, and I do see that with that. It's got a nice blue brush roll with the red bristles on, a fully yellow cyclone and shroud assembly. So they are starting to get a little bit more colourful again, which I think is good. But I don't think they're ever going to go back to the sort of time when they produced them in these sort of colours. This really was a striking looking machine. The other limited edition one that they did do was they did a DC03 and DC02 clear model, which I would love to get, to be honest, if I saw one in good condition. But usually when they do come up, they're sort of the other side of the country and the sellers won't post them, so that is the big issue I do seem to find. Whenever I see something on eBay, I thought I wouldn't mind that, self-collect only, and it's at the other side of the country. And I've mentioned this before in other videos that I've done. I was fortunate with this one that it was in Wolverhampton, and it was like a 30-mile drive to go and fetch it. What I used to say was, you know, if a vacuum was in a sort of a 30 to 50-mile radius of where I lived, I would go and fetch it from there. So I've gone to Manchester for vacuums before, I've gone to Birmingham, but I don't really sort of go outside that. Otherwise it's just too far to drive to go and fetch. I know Dorian does, he drives a long way to go and fetch his. But I just don't like to do like hundreds and hundreds of miles just for fetching a vacuum cleaner. A lot of sellers won't post these, especially these old ones like this, and perhaps it's for the best because when they do get posted, they do get damaged easily. Because these old Dysons now are very brittle, the ABS has now suffered it's ageing really. When this type of plastic gets old, especially if it's been left in the sun for a lot during its life, or out in UV light, it makes the plastic go brittle. And these handles can snap off, various other bits can snap off. I know Dorian, when he had his Dysons come, one of them was damaged. It was damaged here on this had shattered. The handle had broken. So, you know, that they are not really the ideal sort of vacuum cleaners to be posting out via courier to people, because couriers are not that careful with the things they deliver, and these are very easily broken. So think about that when you buy one of these on eBay. If the seller's going to post it to you, it may not arrive in one piece. If it's possible to self-collect it, self-collect it. That's what I'll say. If it's local to you and you can drive there to get it, do so. Don't have these posted. DC04s, older DC07s, the DC01s are now very fragile. You really, really have to be careful when you use them as well, because if it falls over backwards on a hard floor, I've known these things to snap off here as well on this handle. That's a weak point there, and they do break off here. So if you're new using it, you pull it over backwards with any force and it drops on a hard floor, that could break. Where else do they tend to suffer on these? I did say the bin handle. The DC07's more so with the bin handle. They do break very, very easily on the DC07, that handle. So when you're carrying it with this, be very careful, because these are quite rare now, these old ones, and you know, they're difficult to find parts for in the right colour scheme. You can get parts for these, but the chances are it won't be in the colour that you want, especially if it's a rare model like this. So basically the DC04 ran from, it's probably around about 1998, 99, probably 99, and it ran up to probably about 2004-ish. I'm not exactly sure of the exact dates on there, but 2001 the DC07 was launched. I know it was 2001, that one. And these two ran alongside each other for quite some time, the DC04 and the DC07. You do get some of these DC04s that say made in Malaysia on them, so they're post 2002 models. But this is a UK model one. What else can we say about it? Well, the camera's still up there. What I'll just do, while the camera's still up there, I'll just demonstrate the hose facility on it, because it's a bit tricky to do where I've got the camera in my hand. You need two hands for it. So on the back you have your crevice tool stored here. I've never really liked that position for storing that. On the DC07 they did it better with a clip. This one here, you can either put it in that way, but I tend to find that every time you pull the wand out like that, it can tend to drop off. So it's supposed to go in that way up, like so. There's a little cutout for it there to sit in like that. But that's how the crevice tool fits in there. And much like any other Dyson, you lift your wand up first, pull the wand out of the hose. This one is a version where they hadn't come along until the DC07, basically, where you could reverse the wand on the end of the hose like this. Now, with the DC07 you could stick the wand directly onto the end of the hose and use it like this with the handle on. But with the DC04 they hadn't invented that yet, so you had to use it basically like this, and you had to put your tool on the end of the handle like so, and then you were able to use the wand to get down to do your low areas like so, or you could use it to get up and do your dusting up high. But basically that was how you would have to use the wand on the DC04. And I know Dorian had a little bit of confusion over that, because he was trying to take that and try and fit it onto the end of here. And I've done that in the past as well, thinking I could do it, but no, you can't, unfortunately. The end of the hose cuff has got a little suction relief valve on there, which I'll show with the camera. I'll just bring it up here and show. You had basically your little suction relief, and they only did this on the DC04, they didn't do it on the DC07. So the cuff there, you were able to put your tool directly on the end of the cuff and use that if the suction was too strong, and I thought that was rather a good idea. They didn't carry that on with the DC07, unfortunately. So that's the original hose for the machine. I didn't have to replace the hose. I'm not sure whether I had to even repair this, because the hose actually hadn't split. And that's another weak point on old Dysons, is the hoses. They do tear, and it's usually at the cuff end here where it has most of its wear and tear at the cuff. They'll rip across here. So I have repaired them in the past by taking the cuff off, cutting the damaged part off, and then reattaching the cuff back onto it again. So you can repair the hoses, but it's less hassle if you just find another one to replace it with. But with the older machines, finding one in this colour scheme might not be as easy. They do crop up from time to time on eBay. There are sellers that still sell parts for this colour scheme of Dyson, but they're not going to be in as plentiful supply, and possibly not as cheap as they would be for a more common colour. And Dyson don't sell spares for these anymore now either. This support for this model, so I understand, has been discontinued like it was for the DC01, because most of these now are getting on in years. I mean, the newest ones of these now are going to be over, what, 13, 14 years old. So Dyson say, you know, they don't expect them to last forever. They expect them to last for a good 10 years, maybe. But you can't really buy parts from Dyson for these now. It's eBay, I'm afraid, if you need spares, usually second hand. So we put the hose away. And that fits nicely onto there. And we put our garage tool back away and stick the holder, like so. What else do I need to show while I've got it off here like this? Yes, the bin, right. With the bin, all we would do to empty this, because as most people know, the DC04 did not use a bottom drop bin because it hadn't been invented. Dyson hadn't invented that at this stage. He'd invented it by the DC07. So when you bought a DC07, you'd push your lever on the top of here and it would open the bottom drop flap up. But the DC04, you had to basically open your front clip up like this and drop off the bin from the top. So it was a different mechanism for emptying it to the DC01, because the DC01, it was sort of hinged onto the top of here. So you'd have to press a latch at the bottom, hinge this up, and then slide your bin off the bottom. But essentially the bin style was pretty much the same as the DC01. So you carry your dust container to the bin, and you would tip it out into the bin. Now the inserts for these are removable. You can pull that out for washing. But the idea is there's supposed to be a little bit of friction at the base of this. There's a rubber seal that's supposed to fit quite tightly into the bin. Because what could have happened is that if people didn't realise this would drop out when they emptied it into the waste paper bin, or wherever it is. They took it out to the outside bin, emptied it, the insert fell out into the bin with all the rubbish, and then they went back into the house with it like this, and basically reassembled it like that. And reassembling it like that is a recipe for disaster, because the machine is not going to work properly when it's reassembled like that. Because all that's going to happen is any dust that comes straight into this canister is going to blow around inside here, and it's going to get sucked straight up through the bottom of the cyclone cone. And when it goes up from the bottom of the cone, it will come straight through the cone and straight into the pre-motor filter. So effectively you've now turned this into a basic bagless machine by doing that, where the filter is going to absorb pretty much all the fine dust that's able to fit through the bottom of that cyclone cone, and it will go straight into the filter and clog it. So it's really important, if you're buying a second-hand one of these on eBay, to make sure that it has that insert in the bin. Okay? And it has to go in that way in, not that way in. Okay, now I've seen these on eBay, okay? And I think I said this in the original review that I did of this machine as well. The amount of these I've seen where people have put the insert in the bin that way round and then closed the bin up like this. And they think, you know, because modern Dysons look like this, with the rubber seal at the bottom there, you know, the Dyson light bulb, for instance. If you look at that now, you've got the rubber seal at the bottom, and here it's got a rubber seal at the bottom as well, and it's in that sort of shape, isn't it? So they think that that's right. But on a DC04, that doesn't work properly like that. Just put this back. Because all that happens when you put it in that way round is the dirt will come in to the bin from here, it'll spin round, and then it won't have anywhere to go because it'll be stopped by this seal. So effectively all that's going to happen is the shroud will get clogged straight away because the dirt will not be able to get into the bottom half of the bin. You've effectively closed off that entire part of the bin from any dirt going in. So this is basically all the area the dirt's got just here. And then they put them on eBay, spares or repairs, it's lost its suction. And they wonder why. Because they put the insert in the wrong way around. But that's Dyson's fault, because they didn't ensure that you could, it was possible to close this up and use it with that the wrong way around. and they should have made a fail-safe to make sure that this insert was always only ever replaced in the correct way. But it was not a problem after this anyway, because the DC07 worked in a different way. It didn't have this type of insert in. It had the bottom drop bin, so that was only an issue with this type of machine, the DC04. So we pushed the insert really hard into the bottom of there. Because the idea was that when you empty it into the bin, that stays inside here. So obviously when you're cleaning it, you want to make sure that all this shroud is kept clean here, and that's just as important with the old ones as it is with the new ones. Because if that shroud gets blocked or clogged, then it's going to lose suction. That is effectively a form of filter. On newer machines it's an even more finer filter than this. So whilst Dyson say there's no filters to clean, there actually is a form of filter, but it's the shroud. This is a filter. It filters out the larger debris from getting into the cyclone. That will get blocked up, gets clogged over the time. You need to brush that off, and you need to do it on the light ball as well. The most modern ones on the big ball have a shroud scraper, so that every time you empty the bin and pull it down like that, the shroud scraper comes down and cleans the shroud. So I found with my big ball that I need to do that maybe 3 or 4 times. Just pull it down, push it up, pull it down, push it up and pull it down, and that continual action of the shroud scraper cleans that off for you. But on the old machines it didn't, and you had to clean this yourself with a brush. So that's basically how the bin would be emptied and the maintenance. Okay, so we just have a little quick look at the rest of it. Here we had the clutch control on the side of there, because it was a clutch model used on carpets and hard floors. Having it on the N setting there means that the brush roll would never come on even when it was reclined. Having it on the P setting means that when it was reclined, this would move itself around to drive automatically and turn the brush roll on. So when it was in the upright position, the brush roll wouldn't go round. You've got your blockage ports here, as on DC07s and later models. The one there, the U-bend underneath, which would slide off. I've demonstrated the hose already, the bin and the tools. Underneath, here's your brush roll. It's a colour-coded brush roll on this one, purple to match the machine. I believe the DC07s didn't have colour-coded brush rolls. You could take your sole plate off by using those 3 screws to clean out any blockages. This hose here needs to be checked on a regular basis because that gets clogged or it can split. When it splits, you need to replace it. Make sure these wheels are freely rotating as well, all of them, because they can actually go rusty, those spindles can, inside there. The belts are not specifically replaceable on a clutch model. I did do a video on my channel not so long ago of how you got the clutch out of one of these to replace the clutch and the belts. What else can we say? The top filter was inside here. So you'd open that like so, and you'd wash that. You'd take the sponge out of there, wash both parts of this every 6 months, make sure that's clean in there. This lower filter here was a lifetime filter. Basically it was a HEPA filter on this one. To get it out, all you would do is put a screwdriver inside there, turn the screwdriver and twist it round, and then lever this top off. Take your filter out and replace it with another filter. So that was your HEPA. You can get non-HEPA versions of this for just a pad filter instead. Make sure you wipe these seals down on a regular basis to make sure there's no debris causing leaks here. If there is, you'll hear it hissing. Same goes for that, although that one should always be clean because that's pre-motor filtered air that goes down there. That goes to the motor, that one does. I've done a video on how to take a motor out of one of these. That's also on my channel. So there we go. That's the brief overview there. And all we're going to do now, because as I say, this is only like a revisit version to this, because I did an original video of this back in 2014. And it was Olivia that wanted to see me do another video for this, but I thought, well, I'll do one anyway. But there we go. That's the DC04. Limited Edition. I think I've covered it now in most of its detail. So let's, it's already plugged in, let's have a push round with it, shall we? No more big mess tests, because that also features on my channel. I did a big mess test with this machine not long ago, and that's got over 1,000 views now, so I think people seem to like that one. Okay, let's give it a push round, shall we? I know that is not as effective on removing pet hair off the furniture, but this didn't come with a turbo tool when it was new. I have tried it with the Vesselwerk style of Dyson turbo tool, which is over there, but unfortunately, where is it? This one here was supplied with older Dyson Animals, I believe, like DC07 I think used this one. If I connect this up to the DC04, I'll just put the camera down while I do that. It will fit onto the end of the hose, but unfortunately when you turn it on, it doesn't spin very quickly. And also it seems to drop off the end of the hose very easily as well, which is what a lot of the... well, I'm not sure whether that hose actually is leaking at the end, I'm not sure. But I'm sure that should have more suction on it than that in order to drive that brush. And there we go, the time's up alarm again. One of these days I am going to have to replace this camera. I keep saying it, but I'll never get round to doing it. The half an hour passes on me so quickly. It is, obviously, it's so interesting talking about vacuums for half an hour that, you know, it really passes quick. There we go, that's a little revisited video there of the DC04 Limited Edition. I'll see you again on the next one.